Hi, I'm Jules, and welcome to episode 3 of the Honest Designer Diaries. This is a podcast where we actually talk about what it's like to be a designer, the good bits, the messy bits, the stuff we usually keep to ourselves, or will only confess to our closest and nearest designer friends. And today, I'm joined by Teresa Ferreira from Ferrrgood Studio, and we are talking about making that transition from working in-house to going freelance. I hope you enjoy. Hi, Shiza. I just have to say thank you so much for coming on my podcast. You are my second guest. I was absolutely thrilled that you said yes. We got to know each other in a very glamorous way in New York, which is not something you get to see every day, but it was amazing to spend those few days with you in an Adobe Summit. And we've now bumped into each other several times, always in the Adobe Ambassador community. But I know you have a really interesting story you're going to come on to the podcast about. But first of all, do you want to just introduce yourself, say a little about yourself and who you are and what you do?
Of course, yeah. Thank you so much for having me. I feel really honored to be here. And I'm always very much aligned with, telling the real behind the scenes and going into this. So, like, the ethos of this podcast is like amazing. And I really wish I had more stuff like this when I was starting out because it's just so important to hear from people who are a little bit further along the way, what's actually happening, right? And we're like saying, yeah, we met in New York. It was brilliant. Of course, it was amazing. But yeah, there's just so much that came behind it, right? And before it.
Yes, yes. And I think that's the thing. People are so quick to say, oh, it's all right for you. It's amazing. And I don't know if you get this. Do you get so where are you off to next? And I've got the appearance from Boba. I knew that was going to happen.
Uh,
I do literally have I've got a sleeping cavalier in the corner and a collie underneath the table somewhere. I'm just praying they'll be quiet for me during this podcast. Most of the times it is just like that. I'm surrounded by my pets. I'm out in my joggy bottoms and hoodies walking the dogs in the dirt in the rain. And occasionally I get to go on a lovely trip and spend it with creators like yourself. And it is at these places and where the inspiration for this podcast came from was from talking to people like yourself at these events. And once we've had like a couple of glasses of wine or whatever, we start talking about the real conversations of just before I came out here. Oh my God, I was in tears because I had a client made me cry kind of thing or different situations. And you were wanting to talk to me about your last role when you were in corporate,
uh,
deciding to go freelance. So maybe do you want to just start telling us a little bit about that?
right. So a little intro about myself. I'm a creative
Yeah, and
brand strategist and I run FREELANCING Studio. We're a small independent studio based from London, but working globally. And as you mentioned, I do a lot of stuff with Adobe, do a lot of speaking on AI, creativity, brands. But before that, I spent a long time in corporate roles. I also worked on agency side and freelance. But yeah, my biggest sort of learning curve has been being in a big institution. I was head of design in the Financial Times. I was there for 7 years. And yeah, it was quite the journey to arrive to deciding to leave that big cushy job and that the comfort of that big brand behind me.
the thing is, this you say now the big cushy job, and your journey virtually mirrors mine. I started off in agencies. I then went in house into corporate. And it's almost like I call it a kind of career in three parts. I was about 10 years in agencies, 10, 12 years in corporate, and now I'm 6 years into now freelance. But I made this mistake when I was in agencies. I think I was probably a bit snobbish about it and thinking in-house creative roles were cushy numbers and just because you just worked with the one brand all the time. But I very quickly realised once I was in it that this wasn't as cushy a number as I thought. And it was almost like creatively and maybe the things we're doing weren't as complex. However, it was more managing the people and the expectations of me in the organisation that were difficult and the hierarchy that existed and the snobbishness. I was civil service in-house. That was a whole other beast. And I can imagine Financial Times would have similar type of people, shall we say. So maybe
I
if you want
mean,
to do it.
yeah, I mean, it's like it's brilliantly independent, which was one of my favorite things about being in a media, because obviously media is just like a tainted industry a little bit nowadays, where it's like skewing politically, and it shouldn't. It should be something that
Mhm.
is like based on facts. So that side of things I really loved. And obviously I really loved as well the impact of things and having a big team, being part of a big team. But yeah, it came with many challenges because, in a big company like that, we're talking thousands of people. Projects take a very long time to reach an agreement because there's a lot of stakeholders. Quite often your creative vision needs to be compromised because the ultimate people, signing things off might not be creative and might be quite stuck in a way of I guess there's this peculiarity with us creatives, which is I think everyone's got an opinion. So
Yep.
because they base it on their personal taste, like I don't like this, or I prefer this, when actually it all stems from a brief, a strategy that's responding to that brief, and something that will be better for the business, not based on our personal tastes. Obviously, there is that side of things, and we've got, an eye for things and a point of view and a style, if you like. But so quite often, the initial creative vision, when it arrived at the signing off stage, as you know, it's like this sort of Frankenstein with, can you add this to the logo, and can you subtract this from the typography, and can you put this color over there? And I mean, in the end, quite often is quite disjointed, and it doesn't really feel true to what you were trying to do. And as you know, when you're in house as well, there is that side of things where there's a lot of people who go in house, and that's why in house has like that reputation for being really cushy. A lot of people who go there and stay for a long time. They get roots, and then it's sort of, they don't want to change things. They're very happy with the status quo. And one of the pieces of feedback that I kept on getting from my managers was that I was a bit too proactive sometimes, and a bit too entrepreneurial, and things. There was a little bit of friction sometimes because I wanted to innovate all the time, and I was, kind of, why are we doing this way? Can't we just try this? And da, 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 da. So that was quite often the point of friction in the feedback that I got. So yeah, I mean, I did really well there. I was always like, performing really well. I got like really good bonuses and grades and all that stuff. I got promoted really quickly as well because I entered as a senior designer, and then about like 8 months later, I was head of design. All of that went really well, and obviously I stayed for 7 years.
Yep.
But I think when COVID hit, it was kind of a moment where all of us had to evaluate a lot of things and think more deeply about our lives and what
Uh-huh.
brings joy, what doesn't. And I kind of realized then, my God, I need a bit more creative fulfillment because if it feels like I'm always doing the same things. And, although there was a bit of progress, it always felt like we're always getting the same results because you're kind of, when in a company like that as well, you're almost always designing because it's subscription based. You can't alienate subscribers. It's like this balanced thing where, so you end up just designing and creating for a certain type of person who've not necessarily aligned with like all my values and all my views and all the things I wanted to do. So I was quite, yeah, I needed some creative fulfillment. And that was when I was like, okay, can we please condense my week into 4 days? And then I started freelancing on the fifth day, which I think you did
Okay.
as well, right?
I did, yeah. And actually, I have to admit, they were actually really good about me doing that because I know there's a lot of businesses have clauses where you can't freelance. But as long as I didn't take on, so I was in house for Ofgem, the energy regulator, and gas and electricity markets. As long as I didn't work with any energy companies, I was all good. I don't know if you as well. I just got to that point where because I was head of design and I had a design team, we were a small team. So I was partly hands on, but kind of getting expected to also be more comms led. We sat in a comms team, and I felt like I was sitting in these comms meetings and have to placate like 10 different people's opinions on the latest campaign or video we're doing. And I'm like, there's more. I want to be creative again. I'm missing that. And I always remember my director turning around to me and he wanted me to pull together a comms plan. And I'm like, I don't know how to do a comms plan. He's like, but Julie, you've sat in comms for years now. and how, so you, of course, you know how to do a comms plan. And he thought just because I sat in the team meetings that I could produce a comms plan. And I went, that's like me saying to you that you should be able to design that report because you have managed my team for the last few years. And he went, a good point. So I was getting pulled like in a different direction. I also was getting really fed up, legitimately be sitting in a really serious comms meeting, and I'd be there in the meeting and head of press or somebody saying that to me, Julie, I just need you to pretty up this press release
Yeah.
for me.
God,
And
yeah.
I was
Can you
based, can you just make this pop? And honestly, and I was in the Glasgow office, so there's already that barrier. I was on a video call. Most of the team were in London. They all sat next to each other and could have the side conversations. And it actually was head of stakeholder who was a really good friend of mine. She actually just launched at him. She's like that. How, and he was actually my equal counterpart. We were the same level. And it's just like, how would you feel if somebody turned around and said to you, can you go and pretty up that press release? Did you realize what you've just said to her? Like, and how you've just belittled her worse in this team? And he was like, at a complete loss. And I have to say, this guy would also send me his PowerPoints and ask me to make changes to his PowerPoint presentations for him. And I'd
Yeah.
opened him up so angry, and I thought, I need to channel this anger. I need to channel this into something worthwhile to get me out of here. And I was literally sitting at there's the staff conference in London in this pokey hotel, and I have a picture of the hotel. It's like one of those capsule rooms. And I thought I need to get aside my Instagram. I kind of like just posted something inside my Instagram and called it Blended Modules. And that was like the start of my journey to get out. And then I very quickly approached HR about, can I do this? Am I going to get in trouble if I freelance outside of work? And they were like, no, no, as long as it's nothing to do with the gas and electricity, you're fine. So I was like, right. And that was it. And I think usually COVID was that pivotal moment. I had started it before it, but not
Uh,
really seriously. But that was my drive then
yeah.
to get an exit plan in place.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's literally you're telling your story, and it's giving me PTSD because it is just so similar. Where yeah, I get people designing things on PowerPoint, right? Designing things on PowerPoint. Note what I'm saying,
Yeah.
and asking me to replicate that. So can you just do it like I did it there? And you're kind of like, oh my goodness, like where to start? Like where to start? Because again, I'm not a data analyst. I'm not a journalist. I'm not going to write an article or put together an insights report and give it to them and say, actually, can you just like stick to what I did there, but just
Mhm.
make it sound like you did it. In our fields, people think they can do that, right? It's like
Yeah, yeah, they do. And I still have PTSD from PowerPoint and actively refuse to use PowerPoint now. And if people want me to design PowerPoint templates, I say no because literally lived in those documents and people treated them like reports. And they were literally like filled. There was no white space at all. And they had so
yeah.
much information crammed inside. It was literally 1,000 words on one slide. I was
Yep, but it's making the font smaller, like tweaking the
like,
template to make the font smaller, and then it's just like this, yeah, absolute report in one slide of a PowerPoint that they're pitching. This is the thing. It's like, then you kind of like keep on honing in and going like, listen, there's so much. We need negative space to take in the message. Like we're human. We're not machines. We don't that kind of like dense block of text is
yeah,
not gonna on the screen is not gonna fly. No one's gonna remember it. Everyone's gonna be bored.
yeah.
And
Everyone's going to go to sleep. Yep, trying to read it. It's funny how the cultures were so different and what they thought design was. And I would get really good inroads and get on really well with certain teams and we start working really well together. But then that person would leave and it's somebody else would come in their place. And all of a sudden they're going off and trying to like create a new logo for their team. And you're like, you can't create a logo. Like we have brand guidelines in place and brand protections and then you start having arguments between each other and they're gonna go, well, we're just gonna go and do it anyway.
yeah,
And I was just like, oh, I can't deal with this anymore.
the sub brands, right? The sub brands. So one of the things I did there was like I had to go through because the department I inherited had it was like the specialist brands. So there was, it was a portfolio of 20 odd different brands. But some of the brands kind of merged together, and then there was always like these sorts of projects happening.
Yeah.
And every time there was a new project, there would be specific people who'd come to me and go like, "We need a new logo." And I'd be like, no, didn't need you don't need a new logo. You're just diluting the main brands.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
that was the briefs. Give me a new logo. So I had to, yeah, really kind of,
Yeah, you get tired of. I even had they wouldn't get any work from us unless it went through central comms and it was approved and different things. And the organisation was getting bigger and bigger and bigger, so it was harder to maintain. They then try and go and hire a designer to sit within their own team to totally bypass central comms and my team. And then, of course, that would end up, there'd be clashes with the directors and stuff and over priorities. And then that person would get slotted into my team. Then I'd end up having to manage them. And I'm like, why am I
God.
suddenly getting this person I don't even want? You're just like, oh, please. And it's funny, like, is there certain periods I went in-house because at the time I had just separated from my husband. I was trying to get back into work. I was going through a very acrimonious divorce proceedings. And it's weird. It's like, in some ways, that job gave me job security. It gave me
Mm.
flexibility when I had young kids and juggling how to get them to nursery and school and things like that. It gave me pensions. It's great. What it was brilliant for was I got leadership. The trainings you could get were amazing. So I got signed up to leadership trainings and things. One of the things I found quite funny was I ended up that helped me negotiate having to deal with my ex-husband. Yeah, it was the techniques and things I'd learned and
That-
how to have difficult conversations with people. All that kind of stuff was involved in this leadership training. And he didn't know what was going on because I was like changing from somebody who's very meek and kind of like intimidated by to suddenly being like, nope, not dealing with that. You're going to this instead. So for those kind of things, it was actually amazing. But I found my career was very much in two parts. The first 6 years, I had a brilliant manager, and like that, I was getting promotions, I was getting increases in pays, the bonuses and things like that for the first 6 years. But then I got a new manager, and I will say the first manager was female, second manager was male, and the last 6 years I was there, they did not have one promotion, did not have one pay increase, did not get one bonus in the 6 years. Now, kept getting told my work was exemplary and I was doing great. The team was going. I was very successful team members who were doing super well. But when it came to bonus time, it was always, yeah, you're doing all right. Yeah. And I was stuck on the 1% pay
Um,
increases. Sometimes it was like a 2% if I was lucky. And I just felt totally stuck. There was like, there's nowhere for me to go. There's nowhere for me to jump up that next band. It was like massive. It was literally my boss's job. So, and at the time his job came up, I was told I couldn't apply for it because I wasn't based in London. That then changed a few years later that they couldn't cut you out. It was a job application process if you weren't London based, but at the time they woke up
yeah.
it was. And it's just, it was amazing the difference. There was very much two parts to my career and it just became so
Uh,
frustrating. And I thought I need to do something else. You
totally.
and you were saying as well, you would get told that you were too ambitious and things like that. I was told I was too emotional. I was too emotionally attached to my team. I was too personally involved. I led with the heart and not with logic
Mm.
enough. And I'm like, I quite like the fact I lead with my heart. Thank you very much.
Exactly. You should
People
try it.
yes, exactly. And I'm a people manager and things like that. I don't really want to be more logical and analytical in my approach to work.
Mm.
My team member welfare comes first, but that was seen as a something I had to learn to be less of. And I thought, well, that's just not going to make me happy if I have to make decisions like that. So it's funny how like all these things just spurred me. And I'm so grateful now because it spurred
Now,
me. Nothing else in life.
had
And
no regrets.
no, absolutely. And how quickly did things start to move for you when you obviously decided to go into 4 days? How did you even start? Because the biggest thing I found was I was in house for so long. I had
Mm.
no portfolio of work. I had
Yeah.
no connections left in the local design community that were agency based. I had no clients. So
Same.
how did you even start once you decided this is what you're going to do?
Yeah, so it was quite scary, and I guess I started as well on social, just kind of like posting one little thing that I had designed just for fun and little Christmas card, those kind of like self-initiated things. And but what I started doing just from the offset was I started getting out there in the real world as soon as the rules allowed us to. And I started doing like meeting people, going to networking events, and joining creative communities that had like speaking events or panels and because obviously I had like that all, that kind of like big job behind me. I did my first couple of panels or my first couple of public speaking kind of on the back of that, I think,
Mhm.
where I
Mhm.
was like, oh, and I was like, okay, brilliant. Let's carry on this way and see where it takes me. And through that, I started kind of being more vocal about, I started owning up the space of, I'm actually freelancing as well. And
Mhm.
starting my own thing. And a friend of mine was like, I know someone who's looking for someone to do they're launching a genderless, quite niche and quite COVID related, genderless loungewear brand, but it's sustainable. It's done with surplus fabrics. Da, 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 da. And at the time, I really wanted to go into something that was kind of really focused on sustainability. So that was like my niche when I started, and that was my first project. That was my first paid project. That was kind of like wow, like loved it. It was really fabulous because there was everything from like tags to labels to packaging to directing the photo shoots. So there was like, casting the models. So it was really, really
Wow.
fun.
Yeah.
It was literally like my sort of like the dream sort of baptism back into things. And then from that one, and also the networking and the meeting people in real life and kind of getting back out there again, that was how I got my second one. And then word of mouth started working and things just kind of hurried along from that. But one thing that I should mention is that so 8 months into doing or probably maybe 6 months into having condensing my week and having gotten all of that approved, I burnt out really badly, really, really
Yeah.
badly. I was working really hard and things were there was at the FT, there was like this situation where we were so swamped. We hired someone a bit too quickly, weren't a good fit for the team. And it was a tricky situation for me to
Mhm.
navigate. And I felt really like sort of middle management there because obviously I had like my director and then my team, and I was in the middle. And there was like this, situation
Yep.
where I had to and that was a nightmare. And that really, I could deal with tough deadlines, tough stakeholders, da, da, da. But that kind of was the last drop in the ocean, or the last drop. I don't know how you say it, but you know what I mean? Like the
Oh,
last
I
nail.
do. Yeah. The straw that broke the camel's back. I think that.
Exactly. Thank you. I'm still really bad at remembering those. How the idioms in English? Everybody. But yeah. So that really burnt me out emotionally. I had lots of work on, but then I
Mhm.
think it was the emotional side of things, of worrying about everyone and kind of
Mm.
being in the middle of uh, a
And it is,
situation.
and it's that situation of you're trying to manage other people's emotions and how outbursts and things. I did have a similar situation. I had an amazing design team, and some of them were with me for like 6, 9 years in the team. But we did have one designer join the team, and I'm going to say it's like a total man hater. Man, I did have other male designers, older male to me. And I always remember when we interviewed them, HR director was saying there's something, did you not notice how he didn't defer his answers to you? He always deferred them to your boss. And I was like that,
Mm.
oh, right. And she was like that, well, that's up to Julie to determine. She manages this team, how what she says goes kind of thing. My goodness, that preceded a very difficult situation to the point in Glasgow, there's the Glasgow Art School is on the side of a really steep hill. And I was literally marching up down that hill on the phone to my boss, describing exactly things he'd said to me, things he'd done. I then found out it was intimidating the junior member of my team, who was a lovely young girl, and like trying to undermine me, like in a really passive aggressive way in team meetings, and like claim work they'd done that wasn't theirs, or but all these things. But then there were so many ways he was doing it, and it sometimes come in like really, really happy and like big yum yums from Greg's or whatever, but then next day come in an absolute foul mood. And that and filtered to the rest of the team and how they felt that day. And that's in a real shift with how the team's well-being was and stuff. And
Yeah.
it was a horrible situation. And then I was going home at night, talking to my husband, talking to mom and dad. Mom and dad had their own business for years. So I was saying, is it me? Is it things I'm not doing right? And it's, as you say, you can cope with the deadlines, you can cope with the internal clients and stakeholders and the usual crap. But when there's someone in your own team
Mhm.
create a real shift, it's
That is
difficult.
crazy how one person, as you said, as you were describing there exactly, one person doing,
Yeah.
destabilizing the balance, and then kind of everything shifting from, you know, like this balance that we had before and everything, and then suddenly it's like
Oh,
everything's
oh,
tilting the wrong way, and you're like, what is going on? And then at the same time, you've got like people higher up than you going like, you need to deal with this. You need to deal with it.
yeah.
This person can't stay. And I was
Yeah.
like, yeah, I know. I'm trying.
I know, and it's just like, and it's in that time period of you're having to gather the evidence, and
Oh,
it's the first time I'd ever had to go
the
through
child.
performance management someday.
Same.
Well, that was a whole other ball game. And then to top it off, so they were luckily on probation. When I extended the probation, they immediately shut down, wanted to leave the meeting straight away. I said, that's
Right.
fine. Next day, phoned in sick, but did not contact me, contact my boss to say they're phoned in sick. Then I got an email from HR saying there was a bullying and harassment claim raised against me.
My goodness.
And then I was getting told by HR, yes, so we're going to have to suspend you until
Oh
it's been
God.
over. And I'm like, how? Whoa, suspend me? I came to you and I've followed the whole process with you and fully aware of what's been going on in my team and their behaviour to my other team members and to me. And I've got it all documented. And luckily my boss fought it and they were like, if you suspend her, then no work gets done. This team can't win. And very quickly, HR then met with him and very quickly dispelled the whole thing and he left. But like that is the stress of that as well. And it then affected how I then managed new people coming into the team. Because I'd always been I'm such a wee chatterbug and I do take things very personally and I do take people under my- but it did make me a wee bit colder and a wee bit more detached and until I
Wow.
felt I could trust them and I didn't give them
Very
such an
good.
open and things like that. But and I
It's
think
quite traumatic to go through something like that. I mean, mine didn't get to that stage, obviously, but I don't. I mean, because what happened was this person was also in probation. We extended the probation, and then the next day they called in and they were like, we want to hand in our resignation."
yeah.
But I can't, and that was all I was dealing with, and I cannot imagine how difficult it must have been to actually then get, there's this like being brought up, which doesn't make any sense, and it's so difficult when you're in that position, and yeah. So there you go, the corporate.
I know. Again, as we're talking, it's amazing how much of a similarities in the timeline and the whole journey that we've both experienced very similar things. And even to the point where we got to we have to do something else and like just spur moment, like doing the passion projects, just making up stuff to get work out there. I was doing the exact same thing as you. I was actually posting, it was Christmas time, Christmas designs and cards and a logo that I'd created for myself and stuff. And it is amazing where work then comes from. And I know you'll get this as well. I get asked this a lot. Like, how do you start? How do you just start? Like changing direction. And I still speak with a lot of people I used to work with and they are now thinking of doing something different but don't know how to get started. And social media is a must. I don't even think it's nice to have. It's an essential thing now.
Right.
If I hadn't started social media, I wouldn't have the business that I have. Now it's so funny to think. And I've got some good friends who I went to college with and they're still designers, don't do any social media at all. Nothing. Like I had to, they've had enough work through referrals and things and they're happy to stay under the radar where I'm putting my face to camera really every day. It seems
It's not easy. It's not easy, and
no,
it's not, it might not be our zone of comfort, right? In fact, for me,
no.
it's very much my discomfort zone, but you have to show up and you have to do it. And also it's one of those things, I guess the more you do it, the less we care, right? I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm getting to
Yeah, I
that
think
stage now where I'm like, I've been trolled. I've had people, I've had even, family make fun of me and, take the mick, but whatever.
yeah, and it's almost like you have to put a kind of like a guard over yourself and just go, I need to pretend that nobody in my actual real life world ever sees this. Otherwise I'll
Mm.
never ever put myself out there. But it's the benefits of what you get back. And yes, you do get trolled. And I've had it as well. Like my accent. I don't know if you get picked up for your accent. I get picked on for my accent all the time. Speak English, get told to know how to learn English, whatever. I'm thinking, I have an accent. You have heard of accents before.
That's normal.
At the same time, other people comment and go, we love your accent. We love listening to your videos because you have your accent. So I'm just like, I can't please everyone all the time. And I just have to accept that.
Totally,
It's,
totally.
yeah. So,
And be aware of that thing where which is like part of human behavior where you can get 10 positive comments and one negative comment, but you're focusing on the flaw because that's like a survival instinct thing, you know, because
you,
obviously we are wired to check for danger, check for threats. So as soon as there you can have like, you know, smooth sailing, this beautiful month, and then like you get a day that goes by and you're like, that's it. This is it. This
yeah.
is the end of it.
Yeah. And I don't know if you're the same with clients. Like, I can have the most amazing run of clients, but then I'll maybe get one
Mm.
bad client
Yeah.
that damages my confidence so much that I have sometimes thought, I'm a crap designer. I can't do this job anymore. I'm just going to quit. And it sometimes say that my husband's really good. He'll come in and he'll go, why, when you've done all this amazing work projects, these like over the last month, why are you letting this one get to you? And as you say, all you can focus on is the one negative. And I think because you can't separate your work from their opinions, no matter how much, if their opinion is valid or not, or whether it's right or not, it's personal to you because you've spent hours and hours finessing that design and
Right.
working on it. So it's very hard to separate like that from the equation. And I
Yeah,
tried
yeah.
some days, some people said, but all it takes is that maybe if it's like my paid. I'm also mean though, so that brings in a whole new level of problem into the equation that again has been struggling with. So when that you decided, did you quit then when you reached that point and go all in, or did you have to take a break before you then pick?
I took like probably 10 days break or something because I had to I went to the doctor and the doctor was just like, yeah, well, I'm signing you off. You're not going back because I just I couldn't. So there was a period there where I had really bad insomnia as well because I was so stressed with everything and I was burning out and I had a lot of work on the freelance side and a lot of, you know, aside from the emotional drama that was, you know, kind of happening around that situation. There was also like, you know, the pressures of keeping up, you know, doing well and the work ticking, the mountains of work that we had ticking. So yeah, so I was just like, I just couldn't sleep for probably a week and I thought I was going insane. That was how it manifested in me. And the doctor was like, I'm signing you off. That's you can't. So for 2 weeks, I tried to not really mull over things and I just tried to look after myself, my health, physical, mental, therapy, all that stuff, and try and and then I managed to start sleeping again, which was really helpful.
Yeah, I kind of
Then and that's when I decided with like a very clear head, I was like, that's it. I need to pick now. This is the moment where I either stick with what I know and you know, it's 7 years. I can carry on. I know how to do this job with my eyes shut. You know,
yeah.
it's because obviously the situation had kind of wrapped up in a
Yes.
way,
Yeah.
but it was just like the link. I think when you're going through it as well, at least I tend to dissociate as well, and so when I'm going through it, I'm just like a machine. Okay, let's do this and do that, and then after it's gone, then that's when it hits me, and I
Yes.
think it hits me like even stronger perhaps than if I'm dealing with the things as they're happening because then it's just like all in one go and anyway.
Yeah.
But that was when I decided that's it. I'm gonna go, and I never looked back really. And as you know, running your own business, there's lows. There's you know the last probably 18 months haven't been the easiest sometimes.
It's in the last 18 months, probably the hardest time in my business since I started
Yeah.
it
Okay.
because the world has changed.
Is it? It's crazy, but you're not the first person whom I hear that from, and so it is. There's something happening, obviously, in the industry, but I would never go back, and I really just couldn't. I love the freedom that we have of being able to go, okay, now I'm going to do some public speaking. Now I'm going to do a workshop.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to leverage that connection there. Maybe that's going to, you know, bring something or I don't know, maybe I'm going to start a podcast. Start the, you know, like this.
Yeah. Yeah.
when or where would you be able to have this freedom if we were in the corporate career? That would
Exactly. We wouldn't have had the same time or even just the time out to think about the possibilities. You feel very much pigeonholed. That's your role, and that's all you do, and that's all required of you. If you try and do something different, I was itching to rebrand and couldn't ever get approval to rebrand and change things. They wanted done the exact same way. And when I think my business now is nothing like what it started out as. It started out as branding by Jules. It was very much working with local brand clients. That was it. Design in your pocket came out of nowhere during COVID and people needed design tips. That's now bigger than Branding by Jules. I hardly ever use Branding by Jules now. It's design in your pocket. That turned into a whole educational thing and content creation that I didn't even think I would end up doing. And as you say, now I'm like that, oh, let's launch a podcast. I would never have done that even 2 years ago. I'd never have had the courage to. But it's through getting a larger kind of creative community of people that I know and listening to everything they're telling me. I'm like that, oh my God, this has to get told. This has to be said. This has to be like this. We have to talk about this somewhere, which is where the podcast idea came from. And like I love conversations like this because you and I have known each other so much, but we've not had the chance to even like talk about any of this stuff. That we've both had so much similarities like to each other and even like how we feel. And there was another thing you put before we chatted about imposter syndrome. I have some friends that go, imposter syndrome doesn't exist. And I'm like, who are you? Like, where do you come from? And other people like, how do you like get over imposter syndrome? And I'm just like, you don't. Like I still, even going to an Adobe event, I walk in that door and I go, why am I here? When there's so many talented, amazing creatives in this room, why on God's earth am I here? I feel like I could be the mum for most part. It's just then you start talking to them and they're just so lovely and you're like, right, okay, I can do this. I can make it quiet again and just go stuff it. What have we got to lose?
Yeah, I love it that you're like, make it quiet again because it is a voice in us. And I think a really important thing to realize, and that's taken a lot of sort of like work on myself to realize, is that that voice isn't mine as well. That voice isn't yours. That voice that says that you don't belong here, that was taught to us because I think when you're growing up and when you're a child, children don't speak like that to
You
themselves.
know what I mean? No,
They
no.
hear it from someone.
Yeah.
Someone tells them, "Who do you think you are?" Or, beats them down somehow. So it's important to be aware of that, but it doesn't make it go away. And it's definitely something that exists, the questioning. And I think that majority of people will feel it at all times in their lives because, you can be at the start of your career and with leaving corporate has that as well, where you're where
Yes.
you're you're hiding almost behind a big brand and you're kind of like, oh, I'm good because I have this big brand, I work for this big brand or this big brand hired, which and then in your mind you're kind of like, oh, but I'm not actually doing, I should be doing more hands-on things and I want to do things more creatively and I can't really do what I want to be doing in this place. And at the same time as well, being in a place like that where every kind of, because creatives we like innovation and we like progress and we like, rebranding and we like really because we see the missing links and we're kind of like, can't we just like address this? And
Hmm.
then that being beaten down off you because you're like,
Yeah.
no, that's not how we do things. And that's not in line with that doesn't feel in line with where we're going or I mean, there's obviously sometimes it makes sense, but quite often there's a reluctance in these big institutions to change, to
Yeah.
evolve, to move along,
Yeah.
and that beats down your creative confidence. It
Yeah.
affects your creative confidence because then you're like, can I actually do this? And it still happens now. Yeah, you get one bad client, and
I
it's
know.
wild west out there sometimes.
Do you know what I feel though? Although that you're desperate to innovate, I'd come up with ideas and I would actually go away and like create videos or animation things and show them to my managers and then hear nothing. But then come yearly review, get yeah, well, you're not really pushing yourself enough and you're not really growing and we're not seeing you being visible enough in the senior spaces, Julie. And I'm just like, hang on a minute. I was like sending these stuff that I was wanting to do and like then not getting a response from you, but then when it comes to review time, it's, oh, well, you could be doing more. You could be doing things different. You could be pushing yourself out of comfort zone. And you can only listen to that so much before you start going, right, okay, I'm getting like No. And it is interesting to me because it's like now that I've left and I still keep in touch, I have some really good friends there and somehow don't keep in touch with. I are just like, so what's that person up to now? And they're like that, oh yeah, they're still there. They've not really did much. And I'm like, so if you were to give advice to another creator right now who's in that same zone, maybe they've been in house for a few years, not sure what their next move is, or they're desperate to go freelance but not quite sure how to even begin or start, what advice would you give them?
I'd say start with the people. So start with creating, getting into a community of people who will support you. Because I think that without that, I would not be here. That's what makes the difference when you have the dry months or when things aren't as straightforward, is the people that support you and that cheer you on. And this
Hmm.
is like our community, where
Yep.
we met. This
Yep.
is your friends. This is, family sometimes, not always. This is the people that when you're with them, you feel better about yourself, because
Oh,
that it's a very easy barometer there. It's like, after seeing them, do you feel better about yourself or do you feel worse about yourself?
yes. Well, is it? I learned the term energy vampire recently, and
Yes.
I like that term. And I don't know if you encountered this when you are creative and you have value to other people. They befriend you so that you can do favors for them and you can help them with their business or their visuals or their branding. And I had to then very quickly learn who was a genuine like friend and who was just
Women.
an energy vampire. And I think that's really true. And I think I didn't do that in the beginning enough, get out and network and find people and find a creative community. And I
Right.
wish I'd done it sooner because now that I've found it and spent more time on it, I've seen a
Mm.
real benefit to my
Yeah,
confidence and
totally.
to my belief in what I can achieve and do. So I think that's really good advice. Where can people find you? Where can they connect with you?
Yeah. So I'm on Instagram, Teresa at
Mhm.
FREELANCING.com. Then
Yep.
obviously FREELGOODStudio.com, that's my website. I'm also on LinkedIn, just my name, Teresa Ferreira. But yeah, just reach out anytime. I would say as well that, yeah, you do need those people behind you backing you up before you take the plunge. And then I think that if people are thinking of taking the plunge, and if that's something that's in their mind, it's because they can do it as well. So they wouldn't be feeling that way,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And I think it's also better to try than to reach an age where you think, I wish I'd done that. Because what have you got to lose if you try? You never know where it could take you. As
Yes.
you and I have now kind of proven, like we never thought our careers would even head in this direction and speak in front of amazing people and visit amazing places and be part of amazing communities. So I want to thank you so much for coming on. I really enjoyed the chat with you. I could talk to you for hours. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I will put all the details to connect with you in the show notes so people can find you and connect with you as well.
Thank you, Jules. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. If anything we've talked about in this episode has hit a nerve a little bit, or you've had a similar experience, I would really, really love to know. You can send me a message or share your story, because honestly, the more we talk about this stuff, the more we realise we're all going through the same things and the same experiences. And if you want a space to chat with other creatives who just get it, I've got a community called The Creative Room. It's a really supportive space where we talk about everything: the struggles, the rants, pricing, clients creating content, marketing ourselves, all the stuff that comes with running a creative business or working in the industry. I'll leave the link in the show notes if you fancy joining us. I would really love if you would subscribe, like, have a good listen, share with a friend, just anything to help get this podcast out there. And I'll catch you in the next one.